This is the webinar recording for the SMART FY25 Support for Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dawn Duran, Acting Director of the Office of Sex Offender Sentencing, Monitoring, Apprehending, Registering, and Tracking, the SMART Office. Welcome to this webinar, which will provide guidance for applicants to the fiscal year 2025 Support for Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program Notice of Funding Opportunity. As you may know, the Adam Walsh Act, or AWA, was enacted in 2006. Title I of the Act outlined the requirements of the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act, known as SORNA. There are currently 18 substantially implemented states, 4 territories, and 137 tribes, nations, and pueblos, with many of the remaining jurisdictions actively working towards implementation. As we continue to implement SORNA, we are also moving toward maintaining SORNA requirements and best practices, as well as incorporating newer requirements, such as the 21-day international travel notification requirement codified by International Megan's Law. We hope your jurisdictions will use these AWA funds to increase and improve the maintenance and sustainability of your program, as well as to enhance training and support of local, regional, and tribal efforts within your jurisdiction. Training staff in your state, territory, or tribe is vital to information sharing and continued success of implemented sex offender registration and notification systems. This AWA funding opportunity is open to all SORNA jurisdictions, the 50 states, the 5 principal territories, the District of Columbia, and federally recognized tribes that have elected to implement SORNA. In this webinar, you will hear from Samantha Opong, SMART Office Associate Director of Programs and Planning, Daniel Rappaport, Grants Management Specialist, and Stephanie Carrig, Senior Policy Advisor, as they share specific guidance on applying to the FY25 Support for Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program. At this time, I will turn the webinar over to Stephanie Carrig. Thank you.
Hello, this is Stephanie Carrig, Senior Policy Advisor with the SMART Office. In this webinar, we will address the requirements of the Adam Walsh Act, or AWA, particularly Title I of the Adam Walsh Act, which is the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act, or SORNA. We will discuss eligibility requirements to apply for the AWA Implementation Grant, information about the award and its timeline, and the goals, objectives, and deliverables of the Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program. We will also discuss the process of preparing an application for the grant. The SMART Office, through the AWA Implementation Grant and other activities, assists jurisdictions with developing and enhancing programs designed to implement the requirements of SORNA. SORNA sets forth a comprehensive set of standards for the registration and notification of convicted sex offenders. It revised prior federal laws on sex offender registration and notification, and in so doing, closed gaps and loopholes that existed under those laws. Under SORNA, jurisdictions are required to maintain a sex offender registration and notification system that adheres to the requirements of SORNA and captures each registrable offender who resides, works, or attends school in the jurisdiction. SORNA went beyond prior federal laws by expanding the number of sex offenses that must be captured by registration jurisdictions. And perhaps most importantly, SORNA expanded the definition of jurisdiction to include federally recognized Indian tribes, of whom many have elected to stand up their own registration and notification systems. The goals, objectives, and deliverables of the AWA Implementation Grant center around achieving substantial implementation of SORNA, maintaining and enhancing SORNA implementation, and sustaining a SORNA-compliant registration and notification system.
Hello, I'm Samantha Opong, SMART's Associate Director of Programs and Planning. Today I will be discussing the more technical aspects of the application process for the AWA Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, to assist in preparing your application. Currently, The SMART Office is seeking applications for funding under the SMART FY25 Support for Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program, also known as AWA, for up to $400,000 per application for a period of up to 36 months. Successful applicants will be notified no later than September 30th, 2025, and the award period of performance will begin October 1st of 2025. FY25 applications will be submitted to the Office of Justice Programs using a two-step process. Applicants must first register under grants.gov and submit the SF424 by the grants.gov deadline of 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on March 3rd, 2025. Applicants must then submit the full application, including all required attachments in Just Grants by the deadline of 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time of March 17th of 2025. Please note the deadline dates are subject to change, so be sure to check back on smart.gov. It's highly recommended that you plan to submit your application prior to the deadlines, at least 72 hours, to allow sufficient time for you to receive validation messages indicating a successful and timely submission, or any rejection notifications. Submitting early will allow time to correct any problems encountered during the submission process, as only technical difficulties outside the control of the applicant and which are fully documented will receive consideration for late submission. Note that it is critical to comply with the submission deadlines. Failure to meet the grants.gov deadline discussed in Step 1 will prevent you from submitting your full application in Just Grants discussed in Step 2. Eligible applicants are state government entities, the District of Columbia, principal U.S. territories, and federally recognized Indian tribal government entities that are eligible under SORNA Section 127 to carry out the functions of SORNA and have elected to do so.
The SORNA activities and strategies that the AWA grant could be used to develop or enhance are the items listed here. If you have any questions about possible strategies and activities during the application process, please contact our office. States may apply to support efforts of local or state units of government, or expand or develop programs to include registration for tribes located in states that fall under Public Law 83-280 or Public Law 280, or for tribal nations that have had their SORNA functions delegated to the state. To the extent that the state is carrying out the registration and notification functions for a tribe, regardless of whether that tribe is a SORNA tribal jurisdiction, the state may apply for funding to support those activities. For states that have SORNA tribal jurisdictions, the state may apply for funding to enhance their collaboration with those jurisdictions. State jurisdictions are encouraged to specifically address the unique needs of the tribes located in their state in any project designed for statewide SORNA implementation. If a jurisdiction wishes to collaborate with another jurisdiction in an approach or on a project, the applicants must include supporting documentation such as a letter of cooperation, a memorandum of agreement or understanding, or an interagency agreement that demonstrates the collaborative endeavor from each SORNA jurisdiction involved in the collaboration. Likewise, to the extent that the state is carrying out the registration and notification functions for a tribe, the state should include a letter of support or cooperation and/or an MOU that indicates that the local jurisdiction or tribe is in agreement with and supportive of the proposed activities.
This next section discusses preparing an application. Over the next several slides, you will be provided a step-by-step guide for preparing an application for submission for the AWA NOFA. There are several elements that make up the application, and each of these elements must be completed for you to receive funding consideration. We will explain how each application must meet the basic minimum requirements defined in the NOFO to proceed to peer review, where the application will be evaluated and scored. Keep in mind that a successful peer review score will primarily be based on the merit of the proposed project, as well as the quality and thoroughness of the information provided in your application to support the proposal. Note that peer review is only one of several considerations used in making a funding decision. Absent explicit statutory authorization or written delegation of authority to the contrary, all final award decisions will be made by the Office of Justice Programs Assistant Attorney General, who may consider not only peer review ratings and SMART Office recommendation, but also other factors as indicated in the AWA NOFO. Application elements. Let's begin with the elements of the application that must be included for it to meet the basic minimum requirements, or BMR, to advance to peer review and receive consideration for funding. These are the standard form SF424, a proposal narrative, which is made up of several components, and a budget detail web-based form, which includes the budget items, their calculations, and explanations must be submitted to meet BMR. It is critical to note that if OJP determines that an application does not include these elements, it will neither proceed to peer review nor receive further consideration. Other required attachments are described in detail in the NOFO, such as goals, objectives, and deliverables, associated budget documents, and more. Description of the need. Included in the proposal narrative is a description of the need, which is worth 20% of the overall application score. In the proposal narrative, applicants should provide a brief explanation or describe the challenges that the jurisdiction faces in implementing or maintaining SORNA implementation and the strategy for addressing those challenges. An applicant should clearly state how the proposed activities are responsive to any unmet implementation requirements identified in the jurisdiction's most recent SORNA substantial implementation review. In plain language, be sure to discuss the jurisdiction's status related to substantial implementation of SORNA, including any issues that need to be addressed to substantially implement or maintain implementation of SORNA. Applicants should include supporting information, data, or evidence to demonstrate the existence, size, and impact of the gap, need, or issue on the target population and community. Applicants should also describe steps taken to assess and analyze their current sex offender registration and notification systems in relation to implementing or maintaining SORNA standards. Project goals and objectives. The next review criteria is project goals and objectives. The project goals and objectives should be clearly outlined in the proposal narrative and is worth 10% of the overall application score. Project goals are broad, visionary statements on what the applicant hopes to accomplish. For goals, outlined how the proposed project will move the jurisdiction closer to substantial implementation of SORNA, or how it will help to maintain or enhance its SORNA compliance status. Specifically, identify in the proposal narrative each SORNA requirement that may be implemented or enhanced as a result of the proposed project. The project objectives are specific outcomes the applicant plans to achieve through the project's activities. For objectives, an applicant should explain how the program will accomplish its intended goals. Objectives should be quantifiable and describe the steps needed to accomplish project goals. When formulating project goals and objectives, an applicant should take into account the performance measures identified in the NOFO that will be required of successful applicants. An applicant should outline how the proposed project will increase the capacity and efficiency of the tools and the technologies used to collect information on registered sex offenders and share it with relevant jurisdictions, federal agencies, and databases. An applicant should explain if and how the project will improve law enforcement collaboration among jurisdictions, including federal, state, tribal, and local agencies to effectively and consistently monitor, register, and track sex offenders. Additionally, the applicant should describe how the project will strengthen community notification programs about sex offenders and create and/or maintain programs to consistently register and monitor sex offenders. Project design and implementation. The next review criteria is project design and implementation. This information should also be included in the proposal narrative section. It is important as it is worth 30% of the overall application score. In this section, an applicant should describe how they will implement project activities that meet the goals and objectives of the NOFO. Applicants in jurisdictions that have not implemented SORNA should outline how the proposed project will move the jurisdictions closer to substantial implementation of SORNA. Those jurisdictions that have been found to have substantially implemented SORNA should detail how the proposed project activities will enhance ongoing SORNA implementation and help to sustain the efficacy and viability of the jurisdiction's sex offender registration and notification program. For jurisdictions that have not implemented SORNA, applicants should discuss the jurisdiction's planned activities and should include information regarding jurisdiction's SORNA implementation plan. The plan should include a list of involved individuals and entities and their responsibilities regarding SORNA implementation. It is expected that successful applicants will report on their jurisdiction's SORNA implementation progress in their semi-annual performance reports. SORNA maintenance plan for jurisdictions that have been found to have substantially implemented SORNA. These applicants should include the date they were found to have substantially implemented SORNA. For these applicants, discussion of a jurisdiction's planned activities should include information about how the activities will sustain and/or improve the jurisdiction's substantial implementation of SORNA. It is expected that, if successful, applicants will report on their jurisdiction's SORNA maintenance progress in their semi-annual performance report. Project criteria and capabilities. The next part in review criteria is capabilities and competencies. The project narrative must also include a statement about the applicant's capabilities and competencies. This section is worth 25% of the overall application score. In this section, you must provide a short description of the applicant's capacity to deliver the proposed project and meet the requirements of the award, including collecting and reporting the required performance measure data. Who will be responsible for this task, and how will the applicant collect the data? This section should also describe projects and activities the applicant has conducted or is currently conducting that demonstrate the applicant's ability to undertake the proposed project activities. It should describe the management structure and staffing of the project, which includes defining roles and responsibilities of the organizational and functional components and personnel. This section should also describe the experience and capabilities of the applicant and any proposed subrecipients, including contractors and consultants that will be used to implement and manage the project, highlighting any previous project experience of similar design or magnitude. The management and organizational structure described should match the staff needs necessary to accomplish the goals, objectives, and tasks outlined in the project design. Position descriptions and resumes of key personnel and positions must be attached to your application. NOFO performance measures. Plan to collect data requirement for NOFO's performance measures. Applicants should describe how performance will be documented, monitored, and evaluated, including how this information will be used to guide and evaluate the program. Any additional performance matrix that will be used by the applicant to assess program effectiveness should be noted, as well as the process by which this data will be collected. OJP requires each successful applicant to submit regular performance data as part of their semi-annual performance reporting to demonstrate the results of the work carried out under the award. The performance data should directly relate to the goals, objectives, and deliverables identified in the application. Note: an applicant is not required to submit performance data with the application. Rather, performance measure information is included as a notification that the award recipient will be required to submit performance data as part of each award's reporting requirement. Some measures are presented as examples, while others are the exact measures that every recipient will be expected to address. OJP will require each award recipient to submit regular performance data that shows the results of the work carried out under the award. The performance data directly relates to the goals, objectives, and deliverables identified in the goals, objectives, and deliverables discussion. A list of performance measures questions for this program can be found under the performance measures section of the full citation. Budget. Another review criteria is the budget. This is an important section of the application, and it is a web-based form. Items included in the budget should correspond with the proposed goals, objectives, and deliverables identified in your application. This section is worth 10% of the overall application score. Please note that there is no funding match required for the AWA Grant program. Applicants must use the web-based budget narrative and worksheet form in Just Grants to provide this information. This will help ensure that the budget aligns with the OJP budget categories and the budget costs are broken out by year. The budget narrative should thoroughly and clearly describe each category of expenses listed in the budget worksheet. OJP expects proposed budgets to be completed mathematically sound and cost-effective. An applicant should demonstrate in the budget narrative how it will maximize cost-effectiveness of award funding. If awarded, it is critical that you have submitted a clear and complete budget worksheet in order to receive a timely final budget clearance and receive access to the funds requested. See the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide for information on the Financial Management and System of Internal Controls questionnaire and disclosure of process related to executive compensation. As a reminder, OJP does not typically approve pre-agreement cost. Please see DOJ's Grants Financial Management Guide for more information. Sustainability. The plan for SORNA sustainability is worth 5% of the overall application score. In this section, you should discuss how the proposed project will reduce the jurisdiction's long-term costs in registry operation and maintenance, how the program will continue to operate beyond the grant award period, and if personnel costs are supported by award funds, how these positions will maintain beyond the grant award period. Other required items that must be included in the application is the project timeline, position descriptions and resumes, organizational chart, memorandum of understanding, and the indirect cost rate agreement where applicable. It should be emphasized that it is important to obtain a current indirect cost rate agreement where applicable. An expired agreement may be attached for reference, but an award condition hold for these funds will be placed on the award until a current rate is obtained and submitted. It is important to work on obtaining these documents as early as possible, as the delays encountered to obtain one may be significant. See the OJP Grants Application Resource Guide for more information. Generally allowable activities and cost. Examples of generally allowable activities and costs under AWA include personnel, fringe, and equipment. The DOJ Financial Guide defines equipment as items with a per unit value over $5,000. Examples of equipment include, but are not limited to, digital fingerprint and palm print technology, DNA collection, storage, and security items, fingerprint identification readers, and vehicle purchases. Please note that vehicle purchases are reviewed and approved on a case-by-case basis. A robust justification and a cost-benefit analysis is required and should be attached with your application. Supplies are also allowable. Some of the items under supplies include computers, scanners, printers, copiers, which also require a justification. Some items that are allowable include registration-related equipment such as cameras, kiosks, radios, tablets, as well as general office supplies such as printing and educational materials. Supplies are items including electronic with a per unit cost of less than $5,000 per item and a life expectancy of less than 3 years. The recipient must provide justification when requesting such items as desktops and laptop computers, which are limited to SORNA staff only for a period of not more than 3 years. Generally, allowable activities and costs include travel, training, seminars, or conferences, and any other SORNA-related activity to include officer safety topics is another allowable cost. Technical assistant meetings fall under this category as well. For implemented jurisdictions, jurisdiction-wide trainings and conferences are an allowable cost. Some of the other allowable costs under travel are mileage, local travel to attend meetings, and perform verification checks. When using a personal or government-funded vehicle, a mileage log is required. Note, gas and fuel costs are unallowable except with approved rental cars. Additionally, vehicle maintenance is unallowable. Please remember that all proposed travel costs must align with GSA travel guidelines or established written travel policies for the applicant agency. Rental cars must have prior approval from the SMART grant manager in all instances. Subawards and contracts. Additional costs and activities that may be allowable include subawards to other entities that are responsible for the jurisdiction's SORNA-related activities or contracting for materials or professional services with the jurisdiction. Any contract or subaward must use established agency guidelines for competitive procurement processes. And you must follow the guidelines in the DOJ Financial Guide for limits on sole source vendors in daily rates and daily rates for consultants. Generally allowable activities and costs include rental space, office space, meeting space, and event space. Additionally, software, including upgrades, licenses, and subscriptions, utilities, internet access, and telephone service, office identification and visibility materials, and conference registration fees are all allowable costs and activities. Unallowable activities and costs. It is important to note that unallowable activity costs include construction, food and beverage, gift cards, prepaid phone cards, stipends, gasoline, fuel, and maintenance. Vehicle maintenance, repairs, and vehicle insurance. Note that there are no conference giveaways allowed. All items must be educational.
Hello, I'm Daniel Rappaport, and I'm a Smart Office Grants Management Specialist. I will be discussing application components, disclosures and assurances, how to apply, and resources for technical support. For all attachments uploaded to JustGrants during the application process, please ensure that the file names are clear and descriptive so that they can be easily identified by those individuals reviewing your application. For example, when attaching a proposal narrative, the file should be titled Proposal Narrative. Proposed narrative submitted for this application should be submitted as an attachment in JustGrants. The attached document should be double-spaced using a standard 12-point size font, have no less than 1-inch margins, have numbered pages, and should not exceed 25 numbered pages. If the proposal narrative does not comply with these restrictions, OJP may consider such noncompliance in peer review and in final award decisions. Tables, charts, and graphs may be included in the proposal narrative and can be created in a legible font no smaller than 10 point and will count toward the page limit. Other application components that are required to be attached to your application at the time of submission include a project timeline, an outline of your projected activities and milestones over the life of the award, resumes of key personnel that will be working on the grant, and an organizational chart. An application in response to the NOFO may, if applicable, require inclusion of a tribal authorizing documentation that notes the tribe's election to carry out the requirements of SORNA. The applicant will upload the tribal authorizing documentation as an attachment in JustGrants. See the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide for more guidance on this requirement. If your application, including your budget, identifies any proposed non-competitive agreements that are or may be considered procurement contracts rather than subawards for the purposes of federal grant administrative requirements, the applicant must also list the entities with which the applicant proposes to contract. OJP offers several resources regarding procurement contracts and subawards under OJP awards, including a toolkit for OJP recipients, a checklist to determine a subrecipient or contractor classifications, sole source justification fact sheet, and sole source review checklist. The legal instrument used does not determine whether it is a procurement contract or subaward. Rather, it is the substance of the work being completed. If an entity or organization is completing or reporting on data or progress toward goals and objectives defined in the grant application on behalf of the primary awarded agency, it is likely a subaward. Please note that any proposed subaward must be approved by the SMART office. We may consider administrative priorities among other factors and determine whether to approve any such subaward. Please refer to the OJP toolkit for detailed information regarding subawards. Note, primary recipients have additional monitoring requirements for subawards. Applicants should provide a list of these contracts as a separate document entitled Proposed Non-Competitive Procurement Contracts. Visit the OJP Grant Application Guide for more information. Please be sure to review the Disclosure and Assurances section contained in the application checklist at the end of the NOFO. The following disclosures must be uploaded to JustGrants at the time of application submission. Disclosure of lobbying activities and submission of SFLLL, if prompted by the system. An applicant that expends any funds of lobbying activities to influence or attempt to influence a covered federal action, such as the making of an award, is to provide all the information requested on the Disclosure of Lobbying Activities form, or the SFLLL, which is completed in JustGrants. The disclosure of duplication in cost items. The applicant must disclose whether it has any pending application for federally funded awards or cooperative agreements that include requests for funding to support the same project being proposed in the application under the NOFO and would cover any identical cost items outlined in the budget submitted to OJP as part of the application under the NOFO. You must also include the DOJ Certified Standard Assurances Agreement between the department and the recipient, outlining the legal fiduciary responsibilities of the recipient related to the administration of the award. An applicant that is designated as high-risk recipient by DOJ is to submit a separate attachment to its application, information that OJP will use among other pertinent information to determine whether it will consider or select the application for an award under the NOFO. Please note that failure to include these items in the application package will delay processing if awarded, as well as potentially delaying recipient access to funding post-award. Please note that the programmatic and financial points of contact for the award must complete the DOJ Grants Financial Management Training course within 120 days of award acceptance. Failure to complete this requirement will result in award funds being frozen until the requirement is satisfied. There is some allowance if you have completed this training within a 3-year period. If this is the case, you would need to provide the official certificate of completion as proof that you've satisfied this requirement. Over the next few slides, I will discuss how to apply. The pre-application process involves first locating the funding opportunity in grants.gov using the opportunity number, assistance listing number 16.750, or keywords such as the title, Support for Adam Walsh Implementation Grant Program. For more information on this process, you can refer to the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide. Step 1. Applicants must register in grants.gov, so it is important to ensure that your organization's grant.gov registration is active, as this could prevent you from submitting by the grants.gov deadline, which will subsequently prevent you from submitting to Just Grants. Applicants must submit an SF-424 in grants.gov. The SF-424 must include the legal agency name and address as registered with SAM.gov, as well as the name and contact information of the agency's authorized representative. For example, your executive director or tribal leader can be identified as the authorized representative. Section 8F, applicant point of contact, in the SF-424 requires applicant to include the name and contact information of the individual who will complete the application in Just Grants. Just Grants will use this information, such as the email address, to assign the application to this user in Just Grants. Section 19, intergovernmental review. This funding opportunity is not subject to Executive Order 12372. Applicants should answer Section 19 by selecting Program is not covered by EO 12372. Additionally, the SF-424 must be signed by the grants.gov authorized organizational representative for the applicant. Be sure to submit the correct name and title of any individuals listed in the application. Also, it will be helpful to include a point of contact different from the agency's authorized representative who can address any issues with the application in a timely manner. Before submitting any application, all applicants must register with the System of Award Management, which is SAM. You can renew and validate your registration every 12 months. If you do not renew your SAM registration, it will expire. An expired registration can delay or prevent application submission in grants.gov and Just Grants. Applicants are encouraged to start the SAM.gov registration or renewal process at least 30 days prior to the grants.gov deadline. Applicants who fail to begin the registration process or renewal process at least 10 business days prior to the grants.gov deadline may not be able to complete the process in time and will not be considered for a technical waiver that allows for late submission. Step 2 of the application process is the submission in Just Grants of the full application, including all application components and attachments. To aid in this process, please use the application checklist located at the end of the NOFO to ensure that you have included all required application components. OJP urges all applicants to submit applications at least 72 hours prior to the due date to address any issues within the application submission process that may arise. When the application has been submitted successfully in Just Grants, the applicant will see a confirmation message at the top of the screen. The applicant will then receive a confirmation email from Just Grants. Please see the technical support information listed here and in the NOFO for grants.gov. For assistance with the submission of the SF-424, you can contact grants.gov through their toll-free number, 1-800-518-4726, or email address at support@grants.gov. The customer support line for grants.gov operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except for federal holidays. Grants.gov also has resources for applicants on its website that may be of interest to you, including checking your eligibility, applying for grants, frequently asked questions, and even tracking your application. The Just Grants system also provides technical support to assist applicants with the application process. This slide provides the contact information needed to contact the Just Grants technical support team. OJP will only consider requests to submit an application after the deadline when the applicant can document that a technical issue with a government system prevented application submission. If an applicant misses a deadline due to unforeseen technical issues with SAM.gov, grants.gov, or Just Grants, the applicant may request a waiver to submit an application after the deadline. However, The waiver request will not be considered unless it includes a tracking number generated when the applicant contacts the associated service desk to report technical difficulties. And tracking numbers are generated automatically when an applicant emails the associated service desk. For this reason, applicants are encouraged to email the associated service desk even if they also intend to call the service desk for phone support. Experiencing wait times for phone support does not relieve the applicant of the responsibility of getting a tracking number. Please see the NOFO for more detail.
This is Stephanie Carrig again, and I'm going to close us out by talking about resources and tools that are available to our jurisdictions. This slide contains a list of resources and tools available to all of our registration jurisdictions. SMART.gov is the SMART Office's official website and includes several tools to assist jurisdictions in their efforts to implement SORNA, including a checklist and the other items listed here. The Drew Shadeen National Sex Offender Public Website, or nsopw.gov, is a public website that enables the public to simultaneously search all registration jurisdictions' public registry websites. The SORNA Exchange Portal is a web-based tool that the SMART Office created. The portal facilitates various communications between registration jurisdictions, most notably notifications between jurisdictions regarding sex offender relocation. The Sex Offender Registry Tool, or SORT, provides local registration agencies with their own specialized public sex offender registry websites and can function as the state-level administrative registry system. The Sex Offender Management, Assessment, and Planning Initiative, or SOMAPI, is a large-scale project designed to assess the state of research and practice in sex offender management. There are also many resources and tools that our office has designed specifically for tribal jurisdictions. The Tribe and Territory Sex Offender Registry System, or TSORS, is the tribal counterpart to SORT and functions as the jurisdiction-level registry system. It also includes a customizable public website. The Tribal Access Program, or TAP, is a Department of Justice program that supports tribes in analyzing their needs for national crime information, and it helps to provide appropriate solutions, including a biometric, biographic computer workstation with capabilities to process finger and palm prints, taking mugshots, and submitting records to national databases, as well as accessing CJIS systems such as NSOR for criminal and civil purposes. The SORNA Model Tribal Code assists tribes in developing or updating existing sex offender registration legislation to meet SORNA requirements. And lastly, the Guide to SORNA Implementation in Indian Country provides registry personnel with information needed to assist in efforts toward implementing SORNA. SORNA tribal training and technical assistance is also available to assist tribes in these efforts. For NOFO questions, please reference the contact information provided in the NOFO. If you have general questions, please contact the SMART Office at the phone number or email listed here. Thank you very much for joining us.